Unchained. After the Plant-Based Business Hour, the interviews will go to my Awesome Vegans podcast and, of course, my website at elizabethalfano.com. I started the Plant-Based Business Hour because I was concerned that people were perhaps not making the connection between the pandemic that we find ourselves in right now with the coronavirus and the fact that it comes from eating meat, just like Ebola and mad cow disease and swine flu and Asian bird flu. These pandemics, these pathogens come from eating meat. And this isn't where we want to find ourselves in the future. Obviously, we're going through tremendous strain and suffering now, financially, our health system, our planet, our mental state for that matter. So I thought I'd bring you news about how the future doesn't have to look like this. In fact, there are many plant-based leaders who are giving us a brighter future by giving us a safer food supply. And that's what this show will focus on every weekday at 1 p.m. And then, of course, I have my radio show also at 1 p.m. on Pacific time on Sundays. It's the Elizabeth Alfano Show, which is the only plant-based radio show in the nation geared towards flexitarians and those veg-curious folks. So if you have friends who are just looking to tiptoe into the plant-based world and get to know it little by little, send them to me every Sunday at 1 p.m. Pacific time, right here on Jane Unchained and WCGO Radio. But okay, today is Monday, weekday, 1 o'clock. It's the Plant-Based Business Hour. Let me open it up to my guest today, live from Europe, assuming that we can have the tech gods with us. Claire Smith, who is the CEO of Beyond Investing and also the chairwoman of Beyond Animal. She joins me today. Claire, thanks for being here.
It's a pleasure. Nice to be with you, Elizabeth.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to dive right into this, Claire, because I've been wanting to interview you for a while. First of all, tell me what city you're in and how your city and you specifically are coping with coronavirus.
Oh, okay. I'm in Dublin, Ireland at the moment, staying with my daughter. I returned here after a very brief trip to the US. It wasn't intended to be brief, but it happened. It so happened that I got there right at the time when the coronavirus was really kind of kicking off in Europe. And I felt very concerned to stay. And decided that I had better return home as soon as possible. One of the reasons was that many of the events that I was planning to go to were being cancelled. In fact, every single one of them is now cancelled, is not going ahead, obviously. So I rather foresaw that and came back to Dublin, where things are fairly calm. People are behaving themselves, I think. And staying in their houses. And thankfully, we have a relatively small population and the numbers are quite low at the moment.
It's wonderful to hear that Dublin and Ireland is quite low, but of course that's not always the case in Europe. France and Spain, of course, have Italy. Obviously, our hearts go out to them. I just first want to talk to you about the consumer side, and then we'll get to the investor side. Do you think, obviously you're probably staying home a lot, so you're not talking to people maybe too much right now, but generally speaking, do you think that consumers in Europe are making the connection between the coronavirus and the fact that it comes from eating animals?
Well, I would say to some extent, but not as much as I would like. Sure. I think that there seems to be an enormous amount of finger pointing. And it's like, oh, it's not our animals that are causing the problem. It's their animals. It's their weird and wonderful animals that they prefer to eat. It's not our markets. It's not our slaughterhouses, our farms. It's, the wildlife in the markets that is the issue. And that's the thing that needs to be shut down. So there seems to be a lot of kind of othering going on around this topic. But essentially, this virus is thought to have come from wet market, but there have certainly been viruses in the past that have come directly from factory farms. The swine flu, the bird flu. The name kind of gives it away. And there is something circulating in Germany now in poultry farms, which could be very dangerous as well. So I think people are going to be a little bit slow to get it because of the association with China and the Wuhan market, where everybody has seen the horrific footage. But it could certainly happen from a factory farm, and we're definitely trying to make the connection between just animals being put together in inhumane, unsanitary conditions, and that being the place where these viruses develop. It's not restricted to any one particular situation like that or any one country.
Yes, thank you for that. That's one of the reasons why I do this show, the Plant-Based Business Hour, because I don't think any of us want to find ourselves right back here, quarantined at home, basically, regardless of whether you have coronavirus, because we haven't paid attention to the genesis of the coronavirus, which is eating animals, just as it has been with Ebola, swine flu, Asian bird flu, as you mentioned. And there is, I think it's H5N8 out of Germany right now, which is an Asian bird flu. So the pathogens continue.
Yeah.
Since we're talking about China, I want to hop to that and then get back to your consumer fund vegan, which people can buy. But China, I've heard, and I am encouraged. I got this from David Young. We were talking about it, but also Just Eggs is reporting that China is interested in looking at safer food supplies. Do you see any permanent changes coming from this?
Definitely I do, and I can give you some examples of that. One of the companies that I have invested in the Impact VC, is actually involved in food testing, and they were seeing some increasing demand for their kits. Even before this coronavirus, they were seeing increasing demand because people were more concerned about cross-contamination and about the safety of food, with all 4 of the main food pathogens coming mostly, in fact, in pretty much all cases, unless there's been contamination with vegetable products, directly from animals. And so they were seeing already some very interesting, great interest in their products. What's fascinating to me, though, in the last week or so, is that they've actually been able to amend or adjust what they're doing in order to be able to test for the coronavirus, both in terms of samples and also in terms of on food, because that's obviously something that producers are very interested in. So it's interesting that safety of food does cross over into the vegan space, from the perspective, obviously, that vegans want to have safe food, but also they don't want to have contaminated food. And then, quite interestingly, the tests that this company has developed are able to be transferable to this whole coronavirus situation. So I've had quite an exciting weekend getting to grips with that, and obviously happy that that exposure is in my portfolio. In terms of other companies, I think that from what I've heard, they are seeing increased demand for their products, and the plant-based products are certainly helpful from the perspective of the supermarkets, because a lot of them have quite a long lifespan. So you see quite a lot of the chilled products have longer lifespan than any meat product, and also the plant milks have a very long lifespan. And so actually quite a lot of consumers who are not vegan are ending up buying some of these products. And that obviously is, makes them safer that they have the long lifespan, because a lot of the issues with the meat and seafood is that they go off very quickly.
Yes, it's funny because I just spoke with Danny O'Malley of Uncut Burgers, and he was saying that while there's more demand for plant-based from the consumer side, that the grocers, at least in his sphere, they're not prepared to shift their budgets or make any major decisions that would change up business as usual, because they're too busy scrambling right now to be able to focus on the strategy for the smarter business move. So while he's very hopeful that when we get out of this, they're going to change their business strategy for buying and allocate more dollars towards plant-based, because they do have longer shelf lives and they are less exposed to contamination, he's not seeing it immediately. So it's very interesting. But I want to hop back on what you were saying about the testing kits. And so as we talk about food, Obviously, food touches everything we do. It touches our entire lives. And I'm wondering, are you seeing from an investment standpoint, beyond the testing kits, are just people with money looking to invest? Are they not from the consumer side into your fund, but venture capital dollars, big dollars to be spent? Are they looking at shifting how they invest?
I think that the trend that was already starting has shifted, is increasing, but is also shifting a little bit in terms of where people are investing. I had been putting money into some companies which are in the food service area, and obviously that area is struggling because of the shutdowns of cafes, restaurants, bars. And so everybody who was in the plant-based arena that had been focusing on food service, which seemed to be, obviously prior to the last few weeks, a very good place to be, because various fast food joints were adding plant-based products, pizza houses, or all types of restaurants were looking to add these products to their menus, and you could scale up your business very quickly if you got a few of these large restaurant chains. Now everybody is having to go DTC, and having to push the product through into the supermarkets, or frantically trying to creating their own websites in order to sell direct to consumer. From my understanding, I think some of the retailers, the specialist vegan retailers, are doing extremely well also. So I see some of the consumer interest obviously having to shift because of the limitations on people's movement. I wouldn't say that it's hard to say whether people are backing off from plant-based. I think what is happening in terms of any investor interest is that the case needs to be extremely strong, like the testing kits that I was mentioning. And also people are concerned about market liquidity. They prefer to be in liquid stock market instruments, which is obviously fine from the perspective of the ETF that we have. But in terms of the private companies, startups, people seem to be slightly less willing to get involved there, which would be a shame, because I think the opportunities are so great in that sector. But there does seem to be, in view of the market liquidity, a little bit of nervousness about locking your money up. And so that's something that obviously could be undermining any fundraising, either by the companies themselves or by any VC funds that are looking to get into this space. They may find it more difficult because people will be steering clear of any illiquid investments.
Well, it's interesting to me that you say that, because the stock market, while it might be liquid, you'd be getting liquid at a much lower price. You'd be getting liquid, losing your value. Whereas it's a longer term perspective, most definitely. But if you have your eye on the future, and the future is change, and anything that is innovative and is more efficient, and plant-based is both of those things, is a more secure bet for the future, I would think. So I'm no Bill Gates, but
I agree.
What I would say.
And that is actually why we are developing the Beyond Animal platform, to give people the opportunity to go into plant-based companies, to give a much wider group of investors the opportunity to invest, and also to undertake crowd lending, where there is a natural source of liquidity once the loan comes up to the repayment, with the repayment schedule of the loan. I think the issues mainly arise around equity raises, where you're putting equity into the company, and your only exit is when that you can sell out of that equity, when there's an IPO or when there's a takeover or something along those lines. Whereas obviously lending has that automatic liquidity. So we'd like to open up the lending market for these companies. We don't see that banks have really helped these companies at all. Even factoring and purchase order financing has been very, very difficult for these companies, despite the fact that their sales are growing and they're getting orders for their product. So this is something where I think the Beyond Animal platform can help considerably relieve this funding pressure.
Thank you for saying that, because I was wondering what kind of permanent structural changes we would need to see in the entire business chain. And I think banking is one of them that has been very hesitant to lend, to these businesses, despite projections for the future and despite consumer really voicing their opinion with their dollars. They have been very behind in this, banks have. And so small companies have been forced to go to, private equity and this kind of thing, but it makes it a much harder road. So since you're talking about Beyond Animal, which is basically, to give people the snippet, it's a platform to help build plant-based consumers. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, it's for the plant-based business community, because we see that a crucial aspect of shifting the economy away from the use of animals into plant-based products is to support businesses that are producing those products, increasing their market share. Because when people, even flexitarians, if they move from eating meat to eating plants, they can't be having two dinners and two lunches and two breakfasts. So any plant-based meal that is eaten is necessarily saving animals by stopping people from, people are switching away from meat. So we want to increase the share of the economy of plant-based businesses. And we also want to create this kind of, I hesitate to say the word safe space, but a place where vegans can actually collaborate. It seems to me that on a lot of the, the social media type platforms, vegans are always having to respond to criticism, trolls, whatever. And the platform really is a space where vegans can collaborate together, form groups to collaborate on campaigns, to collaborate on deals, to post jobs, within vegan businesses. If you're a vegan person, you'd much prefer to work for a vegan business. Post, their skills, and freelancers particularly. Personally, I'd much rather have a vegan lawyer, vegan accountant, vegan social media. We have that. So all of our social media people, our data scientists that are working with us, they're vegan. And so, I really want to, enable this, keeping money within the vegan economy and providing support to vegan business owners of all sizes, not just the high growth, food tech companies that the VC firms are interested in, but your local vegan cafe, vegan baker, etc., allowing that support to be on a community grassroots basis, so that we're all helping each other and hopefully preventing leakage out into the wider economy, which is based around meat.
Mm-hmm. I love that you say this, because I was thinking before I interviewed you that I can see the value of this to crowdsource consumers to help build this economy among vegans. Yeah. I would love to see this kind of collaboration happen between the vegan businesses themselves. Many of them run up against the same problems. They have sourcing issues. They have contract manufacturing issues. Just as a tiny FYI, for those of you on the consumer end who are saying, oh my gosh, I'm eating Beyond and I'm making a brown rice bowl with kale and avocados. Obviously, we have options. Why isn't the whole world switching? Well, we need more than Beyond and Impossible Burgers. We need more than burgers. So you've got to get chicken and pork and steak and ribs, and all of these things have to scale up. And from the innovation or the testing of a couple products to being able to feed the entire United States or the world, you have a lot of manufacturing steps to go to. And right now, one of the bottleneck issues is that there aren't enough mid-size manufacturing plants to actually make plant-based items. So I would love to see collaboration between plant-based businesses themselves, where maybe they fundraise together to build a small manufacturing plant together and share that space and share that business, actually.
I totally agree, and on the platform, we do want to provide supply chain solutions, but I mean, a lot of the time the companies could be interacting with each other better, and there is there are features on the platform where you can say, I'm looking for this, looking for that, or I can offer this, I can offer that, so that people can actually publish the things that they need and the things that they're prepared to offer to others on the platform. And that can be businesses as well. You know, the way that it's built, you can be a person or you can be a business, and you have exactly the same functionality to post up those types of offers. Yes, the co-manufacturing is a big issue for quite a number of different products. I heard about a mothballed yogurt factory in the south of Ireland, and I've almost, you know, I'm making it a personal mission to try and find somebody to take over that yogurt factory and run it as a vegan yogurt factory, because yogurt is one particular thing which seems to be quite difficult to find quality ones, and the manufacturing for yogurt is more tricky because of the type of product that it is. Same as cheese, because it's a live product, and you can't have multiple different cheeses going on at the same time, because they'll all kind of interact with each other. So there's certainly a lot to do there in terms of building out that supply chain. What we're up against is a supply chain for meat which has been honed over decades, and that really needs to be dismantled. But the plant-based supply chain is different. It involves different more raw materials, different equipment to create the products, and that really does need to be built from scratch, and does need a collaborative effort, as you say.
Yes, and without it, you really don't have the growth that we need to replace meat and dairy. So that is something of concern and a bit of a hurdle. And I know sometimes vegans say, well, gosh, we have the opportunity here. Why doesn't everybody just switch over? But we still need more products out there, really, to make that happen. So let's switch back to what you are perhaps best known for, and that would be Beyond Investing and the vegan ETF, which came out, give or take, I want to say May of last year. Of course, the stock market globally is having very tough days. We know that. But why don't you go ahead and tell people what the vegan ETF is? It's VEGN, how they can get it, what it represents, etc.
Yes, certainly. So the ETF actually launched on the stock exchange in September of last year. But if you're remembering June, it may be because we launched the index a year previously to that. So that would be June 2018. So the index was quoted live and calculated through till September and continues to be calculated, but the ETF was launched in September 2019. So we've got, I would say, less than 6 months of live performance, but it's been very interesting to watch the index, the ETF, and how it has tracked the index over that period. Both the index and the ETF were outperforming the S&P 500 through the rally. And on the downside, at the last point where I looked, it was still outperforming on the downside. People who've signed up or subscribed to our mailings can read our latest bulletin on that, which we sent out a week ago. And I'm looking to update those figures for the end of March. Despite the fact that our index is quite heavy in technology and in financials, which are both quite high beta types of stocks, so they often go up more than the market, but they can fall more than the market as well. What has helped us on the downside is the fact that our screens, so we have negative screens that are stripping out animal exploitation, fossil fuels, weapons and defense, plastics, and that's actually steered us clear of quite a lot of problems in this market. We saw the oil price fall quite significantly a week and a half ago, and we have no fossil fuels. We have no banks that are heavily supporting fossil fuels, so they were hit as well. So that helped us on the downside. In terms of animal exploitation, some of those companies have been hit very hard. The meat producers have been hit very hard, but also now we're seeing a lot of the restaurant chains, fast foods, which are being hit hard because of the shutdowns of cafes and restaurants. The entire consumer discretionary sector is pretty much dead. I'm sorry, if you're sitting at home, you're not going to be buying new coats, new, swimsuits, new any type of clothing, you're really going to be pulling back on that kind of expenditure as well, because you may be worried about your job and how your company is going to continue to to pay you if everything is shut down. So that growth hit is definitely going to hit the consumer sector very hard, and because of our screens, we don't have very much at all in the consumer discretionary side of the stock market. We also don't have consumer staples so much, and obviously there is demand for consumer staples. The supermarkets are presumably doing well because everybody's just having to buy their product there. But overall, we consider that the consumer market will, we feel that the consumer market will be somewhat depressed because everybody's activities are so constrained, and so their ability to buy their ability to buy things is not constrained so much through the delivery companies, but the reason that they might want to buy things is very constrained, frankly, because if you're sitting at home, what do you wear? I'm certainly not putting on my business suits. Everybody's just sitting in their sweatpants and not really caring too much what they look like.
But not us. So I'll say that basically to help people out, you've talked a lot about what's not in that fund, VEGN. You can get it on Fidelity, Merrill Edge, just trade it yourself, go out and get it, support that. So it's obviously not meat and dairy and fossil fuels and weapons. What is in it, as I've gone through it, is a lot of tech. Is that right? A lot of Microsoft, Apple, a lot of tech. And then I was looking through, but I only got through, let's say, the top 10. What about solar companies and that kind of investment?
Yes, we have within our policies a sort of proactive approach to investing in companies that are passing our screens that are in the mid-cap space. So the S&P 500 only takes you down to the top, only takes in the top 500 stocks, so down to number 500. We're looking below that in any of these areas where we see that we're taking out quite a lot of stocks. So we are taking out a lot of fossil fuels. We're taking out utility stocks, which are heavy users of fossil fuels. But what that means is that we look into small stocks to try and replace those exposures. We have Beyond Meat, for example, which is in the Vegan Climate Index, but it's not in the S&P 500. So if we were not doing that exploration in the mid-cap to try and find companies that can replace some of those exposures we're taking out, we wouldn't have Beyond Meat. So we are doing that rather more proactive approach in the smaller stocks to try and to bring them into the portfolio. Even though they're not in the large, not in our core large cap index that we're drawing from.
Of course, makes so much sense. Again, VEGN, you can find it just trading now, Fidelity, Merrill Lynch, Merrill Edge, whatever you do to trade, Ameritrade, if that's even still around. Oh my gosh. Whatever you do, it is very easy to access. So Claire, thank you for being with me today. I have some quick exit questions. Some of these are going to be one-word answers. You'll know off the top of your head. Others are a little bit more pensive, but I'll just start. Where do you see us going in the future? What are your predictions?
Oh God, that's not a nice question to ask now. Where do I see us going? I see that this period of calmness is going to cause a certain amount of reflection. People have time to think, and I hope that time they take advantage of that time to think and really try and understand what's important in life. And it may be different than what they were doing a couple of months ago.
Yes, which let's hope, and that's if we could get a silver lining, that would be the one that we want, that people make the connection between eating animals and the peril it has caused our society, mentally, our health, financially, etc. Okay, what do you wish you knew 10 years ago that you know now?
10 years ago.
Or,
I think when we 12, were 10 years ago.
7.
Okay. Well, this being a financial person, I wish I'd known 10 years ago. So that was 2009. 2010, I guess. I wish. I guess I wish I'd have known how much the market was going to go up over that period.
Sure.
Although there were some bumps along the way with the Eurozone crisis, etc. Yeah, I think, I think, well, with the benefit of hindsight, there might have been some changes in that sense in terms of my portfolio. I'm naturally a little bit sort of pessimistic in terms of the financial area, but I think that makes me a little bit, more risk averse and a little bit more cautious, which is possibly a good thing. Yes, the government with the quantitative easing did provoke an enormous amount of this bull rally, and so maybe we're reaping we're reaping what we sowed in terms of pushing assets up to these kind of levels that they necessarily had to come back to some kind of reality. So yes, if I was going to say what I wish I'd have known 10 years ago, it would have definitely been how the market was going to turn out, because that's my business, and that would be a very, very useful thing to have known, frankly.
So are you saying you're not, you don't think that the economy is going to bounce back 6 months from now when people are, let's hope, back to work?
Look, I mean, being super serious, I think that there's, things will get worse before they get better. Mm-hmm. What we've got at the moment is that we've got an embedded pool of people who are infected, and that needs to actually become apparent because of the the incubation period.
Of course.
And it's good to know at this point how well that situation is going to be managed, because of the responses of governments. And I'm certainly not pointing the finger at any one government. I think all of them have made mistakes in all sorts of different ways, and so that I think is the big unknown here. It's not just a question of what the virus can do, but it's what the government responses can do and have done up to this point in terms of making the situation, better or making it worse, frankly. So 6 months, I hope that some of us will be able to take back some of the lives that we had before. But I actually do doubt that it will be on a global basis. I think it would be, I'm totally prepared to bet against it being completely resolved in 6 months' time. Mm-hmm. I will say that there is obviously a lot of research, a lot of activity going on around treatments. Another one of my companies, all stellar companies, that I put money into in terms of VC, is actually just about to set out with a clinical trial of an extract that they have isolated from plants. Plants are our future.
Definitely.
Plants will. And so this extract could well be quite helpful, certainly in terms of the treatment. Although it wouldn't be a cure. I'm not sure that there is ever a cure for a virus. There's only managing to suppress the worst effects. So I hope that they and other companies are working hard on this at the moment, which could. That could pull in some of that, some of the time that you mentioned. It could make it realistic, possibly. But the problem is that obviously it does need to be properly tested. We don't want to make the situation worse by throwing a drug at people which has not been tested. So I think at the moment the main hope is for a drug that's already gone through a number of trials being repurposed for this. And that, or some kind of other product like the plant extract that I mentioned, which has been deemed safe and can potentially be helpful in this regard. So yes, if things go on as they are, I guess, without any immediate cure or treatment, then yes, 6 months down the line, it's very hard to see us being completely out of it. But if one of these treatments does prove effective, then there may be a chance. Yes.
Well, it would be wonderful to have a plant-based extract as a treatment. So Claire, please keep us updated on that. It's kind of riffing off of what you just said. You're not that optimistic, which I understand. So when you have a bad day, perhaps a bad market, which would have been today, yesterday, the day before that, the day before that, do you have one phrase that you tell yourself, one thing that you say to bring your spirits back up?
One thing, I don't know. I think well, I'm going to be English and say keep calm and carry on. That's what we do. We're very stoic.
Yes.
And actually, on my sofa, I have a cushion, and it actually says "keep calm and drink champagne," which is slightly different. But that's a little bit of a joke, obviously.
Actually, I think that is keeping calm and carrying on, isn't it, for the Brits? Okay,
yeah, so that's great. That's exactly what we do.
So these questions really
and
are.
Being calm.
So sorry. Please go ahead.
No, exactly. That's exactly what the Brits do. They are known for it, and I think in this situation, as we've seen in the shops and all the rest of it, going into a panic doesn't help anybody. So yes, I think trying to, whatever the situation, adopt a calm approach is the best way forward.
Well, then may we all be British. Okay, now these questions are actually one-word answers, so I'm going to keep it to one word, Claire. What are we always going to find in your fridge? Uh-oh, can you hear me?
Probably almond milk.
Okay, almond milk.
Yeah, I think the one thing that I immediately visualized was almond milk. Yeah.
Okay, almond milk. Okay, in the days
that's
when
my favorite in my porridge.
Okay, if you're busy, you're traveling, you're running around, you miss lunch, you're just crazy busy, what is your go-to snack?
Oh, pistachio nuts. I adore them.
Okay, pistachio nuts.
There's no better flavor than pistachio nuts. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so again, you've had a busy day, you walk through the door. What's the one meal you can always make in 10 minutes? It's your go-to, it's always fabulous.
I can do roasted vegetables. I'm actually a terrible cook.
Okay. Well, that's
why I'm so interested in all of these new and interesting foods. Thank you.
Well, that's why we have Jane Velez Mitchell's show, New Day, New Chef on Amazon Prime. I hope that everybody watches it. Claire, I want to thank you for your time today and for working with me on some tech stuff. We did make it through. So thank you for all you do. Thank you for creating Beyond Animal, which is a platform that allows vegans to come together in a community fashion to support plant-based businesses and help them grow. Thank you for doing Beyond Investing, which has the vegan VEGN ETF, where you can make sure that your dollars are going towards impact investing by being with companies that aren't doing harm to animals, to us, to the planet. So please look for that. And then generally, you're just such a wealth of knowledge. I see you on LinkedIn. I encourage everyone to follow you on LinkedIn. You're always sharing such great information. So thank you for being such a positive force in the industry. I do appreciate that, and I am grateful. I want to thank you for being on the Plant-Based Business Hour, and I want to take this time to thank everyone for joining me every weekday right here live on Jane Unchained for the Plant-Based Business Hour, where we focus on making the connection for people between pandemics such as coronavirus and eating animals. But even more importantly than that, we focus on the future so that we do not find ourselves here again. And we focus on the solution, which is plant-based food. So let's talk to the business leaders that are making that future happen for us, for the safety of our food supply, for the safety of the health of our families and future generations. Stay tuned, folks, because together we are taking back our health and the health of the planet. I'll see you again tomorrow, 1 p.m. right here on Jane Unchained, and every Sunday at 1 p.m. on Jane Unchained for my radio show, The Elizabeth Alfano Show, and WCGO Radio. Bye, everybody.